Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe or hit the bell icon. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Sotirios Stasinopoulos. So welcome to the show.
Hello, Frits, and hello to all your audience. I'm really excited to be here. As you mentioned, my name is quite long. It's Sotirios Stasinopoulos. Is a very Greek name since I come from Greece, but you can definitely call me Sot for short, just to make your life easier.
So thank you so much. So as mentioned, allow me to introduce you a little bit further. You're a Greek native, but currently working in Beijing, and you've been in China for the last 10 years. You have a PhD in automation and robotics from the Tsinghua University, and for those who don't know, that's actually the Stanford of China, so very impressive. Serial entrepreneur in robotics and AI, and the founder and CEO of Popular Robotics and creator of Robociti. So we're going to talk a lot about robots today, which brings me the first question. What was your first experience with a robot?
Well, that is quite a difficult question to answer. Since while I was growing up, I had a lot of stimuli from like engineering or programming. For example, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, growing up, my parents had bought me a set of transformers. So I was very excited at that time to get them to change their form and then combine them to form this bigger kind of robot. So I was really excited about the idea of like combining things together, making them work together, and then making them do something better. And then maybe about 10 years old, I also was exposed to a bit more programming or electronics, because after school, while I was in the preliminary school, we had this sort of electronics class where the instructor there would just give us some sort of small chips or tell us how these things work internally. So I was very fascinated about how things worked and how to maybe make them do other things than what they were supposed to do. So for example, you could take, I don't know, the chip from a toaster and make it, I don't know, operate some LEDs or make it, I don't know, create some sound. So that was very fascinating for me. But to answer the question specifically, the first time I really got in touch with the real robotic application was during my undergrad years in the electrical engineering and computer engineering school that I studied as an undergrad student. So it was in the National Technical University of Athens, where we did have some theoretical classes, but what really amazed me was a lab course where the instructor showed us how self-balancing quadrocopter worked and how it stayed in balance. And it was really something you said, oh, this is cool. This is really what I wanted to do, because through my school, you could actually do a lot of different directions. You could be maybe a more software engineer. You could focus on hardware. You could focus on motors, even finance. But what really fascinated me was this direction, like automation, robots, machines that work on their own. So I was really excited about that.
Okay, that's actually a good lesson. Just being exposed to something where you can touch and feel it, that actually gets people, connected and interested.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the theory is important, but what really excites people is actually getting to touch something, getting to build something with their own hands. So that is really what got me motivated to begin with.
Okay, now as we're going to talk about robots today, give us a brief definition. What is a robot?
Well, the definition for the robot has actually changed throughout time and through the development of the robotics industry, actually. In the beginning, it was just something called automaton, which could just move on its own. Then it was something that could, complete a task that was programmed to it. But more recently, with the advancement also of AI and a lot of other, let's say, subsections of the field, you could say that a robot is a machine that has some mechanical body. It has electronics parts and some sort of power that can drive some sort of motion. So it also needs to be able to move within a specific area of operation. And then it has to have some level of autonomy. So whether it is either you can have it remote controlled or you can have it fully autonomous, but it has to have some sort of autonomy on its own. And the last stage is that it needs to be programmable and reprogrammable, meaning you need to be able to give a task to it to complete, because a robot needs to be able to complete specific tasks. And then maybe you can reprogram it if something needs to be changed. So these are levels that you can define this, let's say, robotic.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as mentioned, introduction, you're now in China. You've been there for the last 10 years. How did that happen? How did you move to China?
Well, my journey with China actually starts when I was studying as an undergrad. Again, I really like challenges, and specifically in Greek, what in English you say, it sounds Greek to me. Yeah. Actually, in Greek, you say it sounds Chinese to me. So for Greek, like in the Greek language, we think Chinese to be maybe one of the most difficult challenges you could tackle. So I was always into challenging myself. So when I went on to university, I was, okay, what is one of the most challenging things I can do? I can just start studying Chinese. So I started, I mean, of course, I had views about the development of China. And even back then, I'm talking about maybe 15 years ago. Yeah, maybe 14, 15 years ago, when, of course, China was growing, but it wasn't like the big boom of like 10 years ago and forward. So I knew that China was going to grow, but for me, it was a challenge. So I started learning some Chinese. I started getting some exposure to Chinese culture. And mainly that was more of a hobby, to be honest. It wasn't so much of a strict skill that I wanted to add to my skill set, but yeah, I was very interested. So while doing that, I got on an internship to Hong Kong in 2009. So that was through my university. So I went and joined a power electronics lab in Hong Kong, in Poly U, it's like the Polytechnic University of Hong Kong. And there I thought I would practice my Chinese actually, and I was learning Mandarin, but no, that was actually a miscalculation on my part, because mainly they spoke Cantonese over there. So I did get a chance to practice a little bit, but very, very few things. So although I was very excited about going to China, experiencing Asian culture for the first time, I was still lacking that sort of exposure to the Chinese language, Mandarin language, that was more of interest to me. So at the end of that trip, I traveled to Shanghai and Beijing, and I really thought Beijing was a city that I could live in. So after graduating from my master's degree in Athens, I said, okay, well, maybe now is the time. I'll just take a year and I'll go to China, I'll go to Beijing, and then I'll practice Chinese. But I didn't want to just study language. I wanted to combine it with some sort of technical experience, because I still wanted to stay on track with my education and also experience. So I found an internship in a electric vehicle company, and then I was studying and working at the same time. I actually managed to get my Hong Kong contact to get me that internship position in Beijing. So, of course, as I said, even though it wasn't the best outcome from the Hong Kong internship, it did give me a stepping stone to go to Beijing. So it was very interesting for me. Okay. So that's how my journey started. Yeah.
Okay, so you landed at Beijing. You did your PhD in robotics and automation. You graduated, and then okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to start a company. And you also started Popular Robotics.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, I mean, the journey wasn't as linear as that. It was, yeah, internship, PhD. Of course, I worked for 2 years in between my PhD and starting a company. I wanted to get some experience in the actual robotics field in China. So I did work for 2 years in the industry. And after that, I felt confident enough to start my own company.
Okay, so you did, and you founded Popular Robotics. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that is? Because I've read about it, and it's very interesting with what you're trying to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I started Popular Robotics back in 2018, right after, as I said, I quit my job from my previous robotics company. For us, it is mainly about trying to create more value for the people in the field, but also grow the field of robotics and AI. What does that mean? It means maybe there are some people that have, let's say, the interest to join, but they don't know how to, or maybe they have some skills, but they don't know how to upgrade their skills, or maybe they already are at the professional level, but they don't know how to connect with other people, maybe start their own companies, or like get into companies that need those skills. So what we wanted to do was to popularize the field, get more people in it, and then provide resources for the people in it. So that's why it's mainly called popular robotics. It's mainly because we wanted to popularize the field and get more people in it, make more people understand it, and then give them resources that they can use to advance themselves and the field. So the main, let's say, points that we want to achieve, our main goal is to make it more accessible, like lower the difficulties, lower the barrier between people from all over the world to access these resources, and for trying to get more people in the field, because as you know, like the AI and robotics industry is growing really rapidly. Maybe more companies are seeking for this talent, but this talent actually is not created at the pace that these companies need it, or our society needs it to advance this fast. Like universities, if you take universities, they haven't increased in number, and usually the majors that produce these engineers, maybe they have increased a little bit, but the demand is much higher than that. So there isn't, this talent is not created as fast enough as it's needed right now. So we're trying to funnel more people from an earlier age that they still haven't decided what they want, or from a professional stage, and to get some more skills and actually enter the field in order to create more value, not for just themselves or for the companies, but for the entire society, because it is the time for AI and robotics to actually take the lead in a lot of domains.
Wow, that's quite an ambition, just to help create, you could say, a pool of resources who understand robotics, AI. What are your, you could say, what are your target areas? I mean, China in itself is already a very big country, but I understand you're actually...
for us... Yeah, for us, actually, although we were founded in China and our headquarters are in Hong Kong and Beijing, our scope and our actually target audience is not only in China. We have a global mission and a global vision in the sense. Our platform, Robociti, is a global platform, and it has a lot of registered members from a lot of different countries. And what is very interesting is that most of our members come from emerging countries, such as India, Pakistan, Nigeria, and China, of course. But the thing that we're seeing right now is that there is a great demand in these countries to get new age, new era skills that are for AI and robotics. And they're really demanding more of these resources. And of course, the problem is that they don't have so much access to these resources. So it's a good match with our platform that is trying to make this more accessible and provide these resources. So as I said, we're seeing this sort of higher demand from these markets to consume these resources that we're offering.
Okay, great. And what kind of applications do these people develop? What's their how do you actually want to implement what robots can do?
Mm-hmm. So for us, we offer, of course, an educational part where people can learn how to program, how to assemble robots, how to create these robotic applications in a more theoretical level. But we also have a lot of people on Robociti that are using Robociti to promote their own ideas and create these projects. For example, we also host a lot of competitions on Robociti. So we have a lot of people using Robociti to create code for their applications and test it on some of the virtual environment that we provide. So we had a competition where we had a lot of participation from India, actually, just because I mentioned India, and they offered a lot of solutions that were very innovative. They were COVID related because our competition was COVID related, but they provided, let's say, some blueprints and their demo videos and their code about, let's say, solar panel cleaning robots, because people could not get out of their homes, so they would need robots to do something like this. Or because of COVID, they would need more, let's say, sanitary robots. So they would program a robot to dispense some sort of hand sanitizer or to distribute masks contactless, like without any human intervention. So these solutions really excite us and show us that given the right tools, people from all different scopes of life and all different, let's say, backgrounds, they can actually produce really great projects.
Okay. Now, is it expensive to be a member of Robotici's to make use of your service?
So you can create a free account on Robociti, actually. So if you go to www.robociti.com, you can create a free account and get access to some of the introductory courses for free, see projects by other community members, join competitions for free. Also, you can see items in our marketplace, some interesting robotic products and other, let's say, news from the community. So all of these services are for free, and they're made to help people get more engaged with the field. Of course, there are some more subscription packages for accessing more advanced content that are per pay, or some more professionally oriented packages that are per pay, but we're really trying to get people in the field as easily as possible.
Okay, now makes sense. Now, as mentioned, you already have a global presence, but when you started the company, what did you do to once you had that idea, I wanted to start this Popular Robotics, how did you end up, how did you were able to market this in such a huge world? So how did you get noticed?
So, of course, when you're starting something, you start small and then try to, let's say, make it bigger. So in the beginning, we just thought of how we could build the basis for Robociti, maybe in an offline level, so we can test it a bit in a more local level and then make it grow internationally and, let's say, more online. So in the beginning, we had some cooperations with some local international schools here in Beijing, since most of our content is in English, is made for an international audience. So we chose English for it. So we had some cooperations with the international schools. We did workshops over there. We had, let's say, series of courses with their students, also with universities here in Beijing. So we kind of started small by seeking local resources. Of course, the local governments were also very supportive, offered us some space for the company, and also some connections to universities. So we started growing our, let's say, content, our platform functionalities through these local content, local resources. And then afterwards, it was actually kind of a coincidence that COVID happened, but like in 2020, when it started in January, we were actually planning to go completely online, or at least, let's say, go more online. So it kind of coincided with our strategic move to a more online version. So in February, late February of 2020, we launched our first Robociti 1.0, as we call it, because for us, this was the complete product that people could access the courses completely online, and they could buy some of the products online, and they could use some simulations or the online programming environment that Robociti has to offer, which actually is the main difference from other platforms, because it doesn't just give you courses or videos, it just helps you also get some more hands-on experience by this virtual environment of programming, development, and simulation. So this is more or less how we grew from a more offline product with local corporations to a more online product. And of course, we have stayed online because of circumstance, but also because this is where we want to be. We want to be able to give services to a global community. And of course, that can only be done online.
Okay, now I understand that. Could you give us some ballpark metrics on how many people you can reach at the moment?
Yeah, right now on Robociti, we have about 10,000 registered members.
Yeah.
And they are members that have joined since, as I mentioned, last February of 2020. And we keep on growing, of course, in terms of members, and we keep on growing in terms of reach, like in different countries. And as I mentioned, our greatest audience is in those emerging markets, as I said, mostly in India, Pakistan, China, Nigeria. But of course, we have a lot of members in the US, in Europe as well, the UK. So we are creating this kind of global community so that we can provide more connectivity as well, which is something that is very important. It's not just about giving them resources, but let's say connecting the robotics and AI community, which up to now has been very fragmented, and is something that we think is a problem, and it will be a more important problem, because the bigger it grows, if there's no point of contact, it's a lot of time lost. Meaning, if somebody has created a solution that you can use somewhere else, why not get the idea, work with them, and then bring it onto your country? So this is a great way to, let's say, exchange ideas online.
So it's not just learning, it's also connecting. That's what you offer on a global scale on robotics. Hey.
Yes, it's the learning part, the community part, the competition part, which helps you grow, but also the connection to the, let's say, job market, which is something that we're working currently on, with some assessments, competitions, and connection to some companies to get internships or positions over there. Okay.
Now, we're definitely moving into a digital world at the moment, but there's still a lot of people in society which are concerned about technology that is going too fast. What's your take on that?
Well, I am kind of pro-progress, so yes. I would not say that it's too fast. I would actually say it's not fast enough.
Okay.
I don't want to be a bit radical on this, but I think that it is because it is not fast enough and people's imagination can run wild, that people are having this sort of problem, because people see what they see in AI movies, or they see like all these autonomous robots going out of control, and that, oh, this is in my life, what can it do? But like the actual reality of it is that still we have a lot of grounds to cover to get a very capable AI, or getting a very autonomous robot that can actually do all of these things. So they think about this, and then they see a robot there, and then like it cannot do all these things. So they're like, okay, is there something going wrong? Like what's going to happen now? So I think that if technology moved faster in this sense, then it would probably be able to eliminate these fears before they even started.
Okay, but how do you also cover discussions like the ethical side or the accountability side? To make sure
definitely these are definite concerns of ours, of all the people that work in the robotics industry, because if you don't create the proper legislative environment, or some sort of let's say limits up to what people can do with this AI or the robots, then of course we're going to have a lot of issues. For example, there were cases in which they let some AIs like train themselves and progress on their own, and then they were not able to even understand what they were doing eventually. So of course there needs to be a sort of measure and a sort of control over what people are creating. But that is also a lack of speed. It is not that the technology is going fast enough. It's just a lack of speed on the political level, on the government level. They just need to actually get a bit faster on this part, because the technology is there and people are ready to adopt it. It's just that the government sides, they are not really that aware of what's going on, or they don't work with the right people that could actually give the right direction towards this, let's say, better use of technology.
Okay, and do you want to be part of that global discussion to help resolve that?
Definitely. I mean, one of the reasons why I said we wanted to create this is to connect people. And it's not about just connecting learners or connecting learners and experts. It's about connecting the entire ecosystem. So if we have also governments taking a look at what people are commenting or creating on Robociti, that would be a great use of our platform in order to help this drive some fruitful conversation about how the legal framework should change. So one of the reasons as well we are trying to also do these assessments on Robociti is to create this sort of an evaluation of how AI level in different cities or countries is growing, so that the governments can also see which countries maybe have the best practices and maybe try to follow them in order to grow their own, let's say, local ecosystems.
Okay, now I have to ask this question. You're based out of China. Has that as an influence on the global spread?
Well, definitely, there are different regulations you need to adhere to if you are in China. And that is why, for example, we do have a separate version for the Robociti here in China that has the servers on Chinese grounds, because that is a requirement by the Chinese government. And the international version has the servers in different locations, the States or Singapore. But definitely you need to adhere to local regulations if you're trying to expand in a country like China, because of course of the high level of control, and of course some licenses that we had to apply for. So it doesn't really stop us into how we're growing in other countries, but we may need to keep some things separate, of course.
Okay, now just referring to the fact that a number of very big Chinese providers are being excluded in Western parts of the world because there's a concern for the technology being used. Just wondering if that also something you encounter.
Well, we haven't encountered something like this yet, but I can understand the concern, because data privacy and how data is used is always a sensitive thing that each government wants to have control of, or maybe they don't want other governments to have control of. So I can understand the idea, and I can understand why this could be a problem, but up to now, as I said, we have kept things a bit separate between the two platform version. So for us, it doesn't really constitute a big of an issue.
Okay. Now, we're almost at the end of the interview. So I was wondering, to round off, what does success mean for you?
Success is actually quite difficult to define on a personal level, because you can be a harsh critic of yourself or not. Like me personally, I'm quite harsh on myself, and I do expect a lot of myself. So I don't think it's quite easy for me to say I've reached success while judging myself. But mainly success is actually usually how other people recognize that you have provided value for other people. So I like to maybe measure my success by what other external input give me, because as I said, if I focus on what I think, it's quite hard to please myself. But as I said, it's interesting to know, and very fulfilling to know that people think that you're offering something that makes people's lives better. So this is quite important for us in Popular Robotics, and for me personally, helping people achieve their goals, and then looking at success stories that you helped actually create is very important for us and for me personally.
Okay, great. And what are the major challenges you have as CEO at the moment?
A lot of challenges, of course. Like if you have a startup, or anybody that has started a startup, they know there are tons of challenges for CEOs, especially in early stages. You don't know how to focus sometimes, because there are so many fires burning in different departments, and you as CEO need to see where to put the focus on and which fires to extinguish first. So priority sometimes is let's say, difficult to define. But of course, that can differentiate like a good CEO from like not so good CEO. But for me on a personal level, because this one was like for all CEOs, for me on a personal level, I think the most challenging thing is to kind of find a balance between my inner engineer, because I am an engineer, like whatever I may do in the future as a CEO, like I've always been an engineer in my head, and this is coming out in how good I want my product to be, or how detailed sometimes I can talk to my engineers about how to fix something. And then, as I said, sometimes it's hard to combine that with the mindset of a businessman that is just, let's get the money first, and then we can see what we can do about this. So I'm trying to find this balance between these two identities of mine. So I think this is something that maybe a lot of technical CEOs are facing.
Okay, now I sympathize with that balance, and maybe we can end with what would your advice be to young managers starting out on their own journey?
I mean, first of all, if you have an idea that you think can work, just start simple, test it out, find your minimum viable product, as a lot of people would say, and then see if you can just get some money out of it. Let's say get somebody to commit to buying it. If you can manage to find some people to commit to buying this, it means actually somebody really finds value in this. So then pursue it. Don't theorize too much, because as I said, like as an engineer, you may want to create the perfect product, and you may want to, like, I don't know, think about every kind of problem that may arise, but that is not very good for entrepreneurship. So I would just say, start small, do a lot of testings, get your product out there, as long as you have the interest, but get it a bit early on, see the response, iterate fast, and then be on your way to, let's say, creating something that is viable for the market. And then the team is super important. Of course, you can start on your own, as I started in the beginning, and find people along the way, but it's much easier to have at least one or two partners in the beginning. It will help take a lot of stress off you in the beginning, because there's a lot of stress about, as I said, problems arising everywhere. And then if it's just one person trying to do everything, then sometimes you may feel that you're like losing it. But definitely, as I said, if you had more people around you from the beginning, then it wouldn't feel that, not helpless, but stressful for sure.
Okay. Hey, that's actually great advice to those people out there who want to start on their own. And so I really want to thank you for sharing your journey on what you're doing to help educate the world in robotics and AI. You've covered the first 10,000. Hopefully the next 10,000 will come soon.
In half the time?
Yeah, in half the time.
That's exponential growth, right?
Exactly. So, hey, again, thank you for sharing this with the audience of the brand called You.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, Fritz, for being an amazing host. So hope to see you maybe another time.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.